wants to do a U-turn because it's probably one of the most common skills that you'll do on your motorcycle when you have to turn around, be in a parking lot, pull into a parking space, or you get to a dead end on a road and you need to do a turnaround. So you can do this, which I can't even do, with your front brake. And they say never use your front brake with your wheel turn. And you can turn your bike around like this. And as a girl, it's kind of intimidating because your motorcycle's heavy. But you can also learn to do that. I'm going to talk a little bit about exercise 6, since that's my next exercise to drill in on. Exercise 6 is the U-turns. And U-turns, as you know, are very handy on the road, especially if you don't know where you are in the middle of the country and you're having to turn around quite a bit, or GPS is messing you up and it's taking you down dirt roads and you need to turn around. So a lot of times we travel on the 2-lane roads, which means they're more narrow than like a highway or a big divided road where you can turn around and make a, giant swooping turn. So when you're on 2-lane roads, they're usually about 20, 27 feet, 24 feet, right? I think a lane is 12 feet. So if you have 2 of those, it's like 24 feet wide. So you want to be able to do a 20-foot U-turn when you're riding a motorcycle. And so what we do is we practice for 18 feet. And the reason we do that is so that we can be sure when we need to do a 24-foot U-turn that we can do it. And it is always nice to be able to do them tighter and tighter and tighter because it gives you all that more confidence when you are doing a U-turn. So usually parking spots, like these parking spots here, they're either 9 feet or 10 feet typically. And so what we do is we set up our cones so that we have 27 feet mapped out all from end to end, and then we map out 18 feet so that we can see where we are on the 18-foot or do the 18-foot if we are practicing that. But when you come into a parking lot, you don't really even need cones. You can just use the lines, okay? And if you can keep your bike inside of 2 of those, that's typically 18 or 20 feet. So when you're going into 3 of them, if they're 9 feet apart, then that's 27 feet. And that's, that's a decent U-turn. My goal is to always be able to do a 24-foot U-turn so that when we're out on the road, we can do them. And why, push your bike in a 3-point turn, especially if there's gravel in the road or there's, some reason that you have to turn around. Also, there could be traffic or cars coming and you don't have time to push your bike around or walk it around. And when I've noticed when people walk their bike around, they're still using the friction zone. So why not just learn how to ride it around? I have to say, learning these skills is no more difficult than never learning them and always doing things the hard way. So harnessing the power of the motorcycle is really something that I highly encourage. As a new rider, I didn't want to be pushing my motorcycle around. I wanted to be able to ride it. And when I saw other women who were smaller than me, which doesn't take much because I'm so tall, but I've seen women under 5 feet ride a bike just this size. And they did it with grace and style and beauty and poise. And they were weaving the bike and doing U-turns and tight circles. And I said to myself, if she can do that, then it can't be size and strength. It's gotta be skill. And there's gotta be techniques that you can learn in order to do those types of moves. And these aren't moves to be doing tricks. they're moves to be safe on the road. And that's how I viewed it. I viewed it as, if I could do these, I could be on the road and manage myself in a situation that I was uncomfortable with. So if you're uncomfortable or anxious on your motorcycle, when you're out on the road and you're not feeling 100% confident, there's a way to get that confidence. And it's here in the parking lot. So you probably know if you watch my channel, and if you're new to my channel, I did 1,000 miles on my motorcycle. When I first started learning it, I didn't get out of the parking lot for 1,000 miles. And I wanted to be able to do all these routine maneuvers that you would have to do on the road on a motorcycle, and I wanted to be able to do them in the parking lot before I actually got out and got tested on the road with that, because I was really, really afraid of my motorcycle. So the U-turn, I love U-turns. I think it's so fun to have an opportunity on the road when we're on a trip to do a U-turn. We would come up and the GPS would take us down this road, and all of a sudden it would turn to gravel. And so we're not going to ride our bikes for miles on end in the gravel. So we would have to do a U-turn. And there's lots of different times you have to do a U-turn. The roads could be narrow, or they could be like, a divided 2-lane road where there's plenty of room. So the typical road that you want to turn on is about 24 feet. It's like if you can take your bike and you can turn it around inside of 24 feet, you can probably pretty much handle any road that you're going to come across. Our road on our street is exactly 18 feet wide, which is where these green markers are. So end to end with our red markers here is 27 feet. So if you can do a U-turn inside of these markers, you can pretty much do a solid U-turn anywhere you go on a bike, which is a good skill to have. So I encourage you practice it. Now you can see it's about 1, 2, 3 parking spaces. So if you don't have cones, you can still do U-turn practices just by going in the parking lot. So I'm going to go straight in this parking space and I'm going to do a U-turn to get back into my drill. Now, how many people do you know that would do a U-turn right there with a car parked right next to it? A lot of times people won't do it. They'll walk their bike because they're afraid that they can't do the tight enough U-turn to get by a parked car. So when we were first practicing, I wanted to be able to literally go inside of a parking space and do a U-turn so I would be facing out, that I could back my bike in, and then I'd be facing out when I was in the parking spot. That's handy when the parking spots are at an angle, okay? So if it's angled down, you want to park facing out so that you don't have to back your bike up a hill. If the parking space is angled up, then you want to nose in so that you can back out, and it's easier because you can kind of just roll the bike backwards. But even this one is angled up, so I would nose in and I would park my bike. But typically you're in a gas station, or you're in a parking lot where there's lots of other cars and there's people moving in cars. So to back my bike up out here into the space is not comfortable for me, because I don't want to be backing out when people aren't paying attention. But what you can do is do a U-turn to get out of your spot. Now I'm facing out and I can just look for traffic and go. So these are a lot of different reasons why you would want to learn how to do a U-turn effectively. Now, an 18-foot U-turn is not necessary. The reason we practice the 18-foot U-turns is because I want to be absolutely sure I can do a 24-foot when it comes time. Okay? So sometimes there's gravel on either side of the road, sometimes there's a curb, sometimes there's an embankment that falls off. Like, there's a lot of reasons why you can't make a mistake in a U-turn. So if you know that you can do a tight U-turn, you can certainly do a U-turn that would be required on the road and have the confidence to do it. So I'm going to do a couple of different exercises that you can watch so that you can vary your U-turn practice to get more skills than just being able to wing a U-turn, okay? So the first thing I'll do is demonstrate the coasting U-turn. I'm going to come back around. So this is pretty much how I see a lot of people do a U-turn. They come in and they pull the clutch in and they go around with momentum. So they're not using their rear brake, they're not using their throttle, and they're not using their clutch. Okay, that gives me no confidence. Okay, I had my clutch pulled in, I kind of wheeled myself around without my brake and without my throttle. So I'm literally just relying on the bike to coast with momentum through the U-turn. And now if I need power, I might not be familiar with going into my throttle and into my clutch. So we don't practice that at all. What we practice is staying in the power that we are learning in exercises 1 and exercise 2. So we got the rear brake covered always. We're not pressing the rear brake, but we're covering the rear brake in case we need to slow down. We're going to bring the throttle up and we're going to leave it in preload position, which is about 1800 to 2000 RPMs. We're going to ease the clutch into the friction zone at like level 1, which is just at the grab, or 2, which is just past the grab. And we're going to stay in that power the whole way around. You don't even have to lean the bike. We're going to turn our head to look where we're going before we turn the handlebars. So I always say chin to shoulder, because that tells me where I need my eyes to be looking around. So I'm going to come around and do it again. And I'm not going to lean. This time I'm just going to do a U-turn and stay straight up, using my head and eyes, turning my handlebars and not lean. I'm going to stay in the friction zone though, and I'm going to apply the rear brake only when needed. I'm still going to cover it though. Okay, so that one, I leaned a little bit, but not a lot. So a lot of people can lean like a little bit, but I'm going to do this next one completely straight up so you can see that you don't need to lean the bike in order to do a U-turn. So we come to the U-turn spot. Now I need to do a U-turn. I'm just going to do a 24-foot U-turn, and I'm going to stay in my friction zone, and I'm not going to lean the bike. So if you notice, I had my throttle on, and it was in the preload position the whole way. I was slightly into my clutch, and I was actually dragging my rear brake so that I would go slow enough and stay upright. So the things that affect how wide your turn is are the turn of your handlebars, how far they're turned, like you can get into a full lock to go really tight, the speed of the bike, how fast you're going, and the lean angle, okay? So the faster you go, the more you have to lean the bike, okay? The slower you go, the less you can lean the bike. You have to stay straight up when you're not going fast, okay? And the more you turn the handlebars, the tighter the turn will be. The less you turn the handlebars, the wider the turn will be. So those are all the different factors that go into how tight you need to be. So you can't go slow and lean your bike. You really need to go a little bit into the speed, 8 to 10 miles an hour, to lean your bike enough to do a tight turn. But you can put your handlebars in a full lock and stay straight up and go slow. We do that in exercise 4. So you literally can turn as tight as you want. You can make an 18-foot turn on a motorcycle, on a Harley, without leaning your bike. It's just easier to lean it and go a little faster. So I'm going to do a variation on this. So I was coming in and going through. I'm going to do it from a stop inside. This exercise comes in real handy for me. I love this exercise, whether it's exercise 4 when I'm turning the handlebars and I have to just get out of a space where I can't go in front of me and I need to go that way. Or I have the space to do a U-turn. I would prefer the U-turn than the left-hand turn. So what I'm going to do is just do the U-turn, a 24-foot U-turn, right from a stop. Head and eyes. Handlebars straight and out. We're stopped, we want to do a U-turn. Say we're in a 2-lane road and there's gravel up here or dead end and we want to turn. We make sure there's no cars coming, we look first and then we go. So we keep our head and eyes turned. And now you can see, I don't want to stop just yet. Now you can see I was able to lean the bike and come a little tighter. So that was probably maybe a 20-foot U-turn. So what I'm saying is you can bring the bike in tighter and tighter with a little bit of lean, a little bit of speed, and a tighter turn. And that way your bike will come around quicker, as long as you've got your head and eyes. The other thing I do is if I want to make a tight turn, is I sit up in my seat a little bit. So I'm up further than I would normally sit in a cruising position. And I lean forward and I take, if I'm going left, I take my right shoulder and lean it towards my right rear view mirror, okay? So I'm kind of leaning over my handlebars and turning myself in. Now what that does is it puts me right up over the tank and it gives me a lot more control over the motorcycle in the tight turn. So I'm going to do a tighter turn this time from a stop. So I'm going to do it inside and I'm going to lean forward. Now you see how easy that was, right? So that was inside of 18 feet, really easy. And it's because I leaned forward and I was right over the handlebars and it gives me that feeling that I'm not gonna fall. Now, you can try to counter sit and move your butt over, but all that shifting of your weight can make you unstable on your bike. So what I do is I get up close and I lean forward and I turn the handlebars tight. And it gives me complete control over the motorcycle and I don't feel like I'm gonna fall with it. Another thing I see people do is lean with the bike. Now when you're doing slow speed turns, you never want to lean with the bike, right? So the bike is leaning this way and I'm leaning this way. I don't want to lean with the bike. If your bike is turning this way and you're at slow speed, you want to be over here, okay? And you want to be up here. So you're close to the handlebars and the bike's leaning this way and you're leaning this way. Why? Because you're straight up still. And it doesn't give you that feeling like you're going to tip over, even when the bike's leaning really far. Now I'm going to come out and do a stop. Now the importance of doing a stop at the beginning and a stop at the end is to build your confidence. It's to let you know that you have complete control of the bike the entire time, and to keep yourself in control of the bike throughout the entire turn to the stopping process, because you never know when you're going to have to make a smooth stop out in traffic, especially when making turns. So you want to be able to straighten that wheel and come to a smooth stop. Another thing that people tend to do is they'll get into the lean and they'll get into the turn, and their handlebars get stuck that way, so that they overcompensate the turn and then they're not coming out straight as well. So I'm just going to straighten my handlebars as I come out. So I pull my clutch in, I stay in the friction zone, I press the rear brake, I straighten myself first, then I stop. I'll do it again. Okay, so we stop, do it from a stop. Head and eyes first, lean the bike, straighten the wheel, come to a smooth stop. That wasn't too smooth. So what I did right there is a good example of not staying in the friction zone long enough to upright the bike before I put my foot down. So that's common when especially when you're new, is that you want to stop more, you want to stop sooner than the bike's ready to stop. So I'm going to do that one again. Okay, so again, head and eyes. Stay in the friction, then make the smooth stop, okay? So I got my foot on the rear brake the whole time. And you can see this is a short U-turn. It's not as deep as the ones that some people practice. So we want to stop right away, right out of the U-turn. And that's good practice, because if you're either making a U-turn and you come out and there's a car coming across here, or there's some reason that you need to stop immediately, you need to stay in control of your motorcycle. So what I'm doing, I'll do it again, stay in the friction zone all the way until you're ready to stop the bike. Okay, head and eyes first. Stay in the friction zone, smooth stop. Then I take the throttle down. You see the difference? That time I was perfectly straight. I had plenty of time to put my foot down. It wasn't abrupt, and it kept me in the friction zone till I was ready to stop. So U-turns are essential. And I think it's the one thing that most motorcyclists really do want to be good at. They say, I want to learn how to do U-turns. And they aren't thinking that all these other steps that we go through in our practice sessions are the build up to being effective at U-turns. So yes, you can do a U-turn and you can coast through here, but when you want to do it under power And in 100% of control, being the boss of your motorcycle, you want to practice exercise 1, the smooth starts and the smooth stops. Exercise 2, the slow ride. Exercise 3, trust and believe. Exercise 4, the right and left turns straight up. And exercise 5, the single serpentine where you're weaving through the cones. Then you get to exercise 6, where you put all of that together, and then your U-turns will be absolutely 100% in control, and you will feel completely confident that every single time you go to do a U-turn, you can do as tight as you want or as wide as you want and stay in the space that is allotted to you and know the distances, right? Parking places, even if you don't have cones, are usually about 9.5, or 10 feet. So if you can do a U-turn inside of 2 parking spaces or 2.5 parking spaces, you're pretty much doing a 27-foot U-turn. So let me know in the comments how your U-turns are turning out, whether you're staying in the friction zone, how tight you're practicing them, and if you love getting to them when you're on the road and you need to do a U-turn because there's a dirt road on the end, or you need a tight U-turn because there's an embankment on either side and you are going the wrong way and you've got to turn around. So we'll see you next time, and fear your motorcycle less so you can enjoy the experience of motorcycling more. So those are just some things for why it's important to be able to do a U-turn. Of course, when you're having to turn around on the road, doing a U-turn is super beneficial because it's dangerous to be walking your bike anywhere, especially where there's traffic. So I wouldn't recommend that. I would highly recommend that you practice regularly doing U-turns and practice all different widths. So practice the 27, practice the 24, practice doing an 18. I mean, once you practice enough, you really can level your skill set up. So getting used to things the first time, of course, is always difficult, right? You know that you're not skilled at it when you start. So it's going to be foreign, it's going to be scary, it's going to be nerve-wracking, and it's going to create anxiety. And you're going to think that you can't do it. But that's not a reason not to practice. Because if you do continue to practice and practice and practice, what happens is you get better at it. And then you become more comfortable with the basic things, and then you can start leveling them up. And as you start to level them up, what happens is your enjoyment on the road is enhanced tremendously. So I encourage you, practice, 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 get over the little bit of an anxiety that it causes, and continue to level up your skills, because you're gonna have a fantastic time on your motorcycle, even more than what you have right now. So we'll be chatting soon.